Hey there, welcome back to Lucero. And today I'm not doing Makerspace. If you don't know, I'm Miss Jessica, but we're doing Tales from the Stacks. And today we are doing another chapter of Stuart Little by E.B. White. It's also the author by Charlotte's Web, and a special thanks to the publisher, and that is Harper Collins. So a big shout out to them. And if you didn't stay tuned for last week, just a little caught up. Mr. Stewart here has gone into some adventures, and he met a friend, the yellow little birdie, whose name is Margot. And so we're going to see what's going on next. And we're going to start on chapter 9 and see what's going on next, okay? So, chapter 9, A Narrow Escape. Marigold liked it so well.
Sorry.
And thanks to Jerry, who's behind the screen.
We're good now.
All right. Marigold liked it so well at the Littles' house, she decided to stay for a while instead of returning to the open country. She and Stuart became fast friends, and as days passed, it seemed to Stuart that she grew more and more beautiful. He hoped he hoped she would never go away from him. One day, when Stuart had recovered from bronchitis, because remember he was sick, he took his new skates and put on his ski pants and went out to look for an ice pond. He didn't get far. The minute he stepped out onto the street, he saw an Irish terrier who was shining up an iron gate and jumped into the garbage can, where he hid in a grove of celery. While he was there, waiting for the dog to go away, a garbage truck from the Department of Sanitation drove up to the curb, and two men picked up the can. Stuart felt himself being tossed and hoisted up high in the air. He peered over the side and saw that there was in another instant, he and everything in the can would be dumped into the big truck. If I jump out now, I'll kill myself, thought Stuart. So he ducked back into the can and waited. The man threw the can with a loud bump into the truck, where another man grabbed it and turned it upside down and shook everything out. Stuart landed on his head, buried 2 feet deep in wet, slippery garbage. Ew. All around him was garbage, smelling strong. Under him, over him, on all four sides of him, garbage. Just an enormous world of garbage and trash and smell. Ew. It was a messy spot to be in. He had egg on his trousers, butter on his caps, gravy on his shirt, orange peel on his ear, and banana peel wrapped around his waist. Still hanging onto his skates, Stuart tried to make his way to the surface of the garbage, but the footing was bad. He climbed a pile of coffee grains, but near the top of the ground gave away under him, and he slid down and landed in a pool of leftover rice pudding. I bet I'm going to be sick at my stomach before I'm out of this, said Stuart. He was anxious to work his way up to the top of the pile because he was afraid of being squished by the next can load of garbage. When at last he was success in getting to the surface, tired and smelly, he observed that the truck was not making any more collections, but was rumbling rapidly along. Stuart glanced up at the sun. We're going east, he said to himself. I wonder what does that mean? There was no way for him to get out of the truck. The sides were too high, and he just had to wait. When the truck arrived at the East River, which borders New York City on the east and which is rather dirty and but a useful river, the driver drove out into the pier, backed up the garbage to a garbage skew, which is basically a big boat, and dumped his load. Stuart went crashing and slithering along with everything else and hit his head so hard he fainted and lay quietly still as though dead. He lay there that way for almost an hour. When he recovered his senses, he looked about him and saw nothing but water. The scow was being towed out to sea. Well, thought Stuart, this is about to get the worst thing that could ever happen to someone. I guess this will be my last ride in this world. For he knew that the garbage would be towed 20 miles out and dumped into the Atlantic Ocean. I guess there's nothing I can do about it, he thought hopelessly. I just have to sit here bravely and die like a man. But I wish I didn't have to die with egg on my pants, butter in my cap, and gravy on my shirt, an orange peel in my ear, and banana peel wrapped around my middle. The thought of death made Stuart sad. He began to think of his home, of his father and mother and brother and Margot and Snowbell, and of how he loved them. All but Snowbell, of course. And of what a pleasant place his home was, especially in the early morning when with the sun just coming in through the curtains and the household stirring and waking. The tears came into his eyes when he realized that he would never see them again. He was still sobbing when a small voice behind him whispered, "Stuart!" He looked around through his tears, and there sat on Brussels sprouts was Margot. "Margot!" cried Stuart. "How did you get here?" "Well," said the bird, "I was looking out the window this morning when you left home, and I happened to see you get dumped into the garbage truck. So I flew out the window and followed the truck, thinking you might need some help." "I've never been so glad to see anyone in my life," said Stuart. "But how are you going to help me?" "I think that if you'll hang onto my feet," said Margot, "I'll fly ashore with you. It's worth trying anyway. How much do you weigh?" 3 ounces and a half, said Stuart. "With your clothes on?" said Margot. "Certainly," replied Stuart modestly. "Then I suppose I can carry you all right." "Suppose I get dizzy," said Stuart. "Don't look down," said Margot, "and then you won't get dizzy." "Suppose I get sick to my stomach." "You'll just have to be sick," said the bird, or the bird replied. "Anything is better than death." "Yes, that's true," Stuart agreed. "Hang on, then. We might as well get started." Stuart tucked his skates into his shirt, stepped gingerly into a tuft of lettuce, and took a firm grip of Margot's ankles. "Already!" he cried. With a flutter of wings, Margot rose into the sky, carrying Stuart along, and together they flew out and over the ocean and headed towards home. "Phew!" said Margot when they were high in the air. "You smell awful, Stuart." "I know, I do," he replied gloomily. "I hope it isn't making you feel bad." "I can hardly breathe," she answered, "and my heart is pounding in my chest. Isn't there anything you can drop to make yourself lighter?" "Well, I could drop these ice skates," said Stuart. "Goodness me!" said the little bird cried. "I didn't know you had skates hidden in your shirt. Toss those heavy skates away quickly, or we will both come down to the ocean and perish." Stuart threw his skates away and watched them fall down, until they disappeared into the gray waves below. "That's better," said Margot. "Now we're all right. I can already see the towers and the chimneys of New York." 15 minutes later, in they flew through the open window of the Littles' living room and landed on the Boston firm. Mrs. Little, who had left the window open when she missed Margot, was glad to see them back, for she was beginning to worry. When she heard what had happened and how near she had come to losing her son, she took Stuart into her hand, even though his clothes smelled nasty, and kissed him. And then he sent him upstairs to take a bath. and sent George out to take Stuart's clothes to the cleaner. What was it like out there in the Atlantic Ocean? Inquired Mr. Little, who had never been very far from home. So Stuart and Margot told all about the sea and the gray waves curling with white kriss and the gullies in the sky and the channels buoy and the ships and the tugs and the wind making the sound in your ears. Mr. Little sighed. Said someday he hoped to get away from business long enough to see all those fine things. Everybody thanked Margot for saving Stuart's life, and at supper time, Mrs. Little presented her with a tiny cake which had seeds sprinkled on top. All right, are you guys ready for chapter 10? All right, springtime. Snowbell, the cat, enjoyed nighttime more than daytime. Perhaps it was because his eyes liked the dark, but I think it was because there were always so many worthwhile things going on in New York at night. Snowbell had several friends in the neighborhood. Some of those were house cats, others were store cats. He knew a bouncing cat at the A&P, a white pismire in the apartment house next door, a tortoise shell in the delicacy, which is a delicate store, a tiger cat in the basement of the branch library, a beautiful young Anagori who was who had escaped from a cage in a pet store on 3rd Avenue and had gone to live a free life of her own in the tool house in the small park near the Stewart's house. One fine spring evening, Snowbell had been calling on the Anagori in the park. He started home and late, and it was such a lovely night. She said that she would walk along with him to keep him company. When they got to Mr. Little's house, the two cats sat down at the foot of the tall vine which ran up the side of the house past George's bedroom. This vine was useful to Snowbell because he would climb it at night and crawl into the house through George's open window. Snowbell began telling his friends about Margot and Stuart. Goodness, said the cat. You mean to say you live in the same house with a bird and a mouse, and you don't do anything about it? That's the situation, replied Snowbell. But what can I do about it? Please remember that Stuart is a member of the family, and the bird is a permanent guest like myself. Well, said Snowbell's friend, all I can say is you've got more self-control than I have. Doubtless, said Snowbell. However, I sometimes think I get too much self-control for my own good. I've been terribly nervous and upset lately, and I think it's because I'm always holding myself in. The cats' voices grew louder, and they talked so loudly that they never heard a slight rustle in the vine a few feet above their heads. It was a gray pigeon who had been asleep there, and who was awakened by the sound of cats and began to listen. This sounds like an interesting conversation, said the pigeon to himself. Maybe I'd better stay around and see if I can learn something. Look here, he heard the Aragon the cat said to Snowbell. I admit that a cat has a duty towards her own people, and that under the circumstances it would be wrong for you to eat Marigold. But I'm not a member of your family, and there is nothing to stop me from eating her, is there? Nothing I can think of offhand, said Snowbell. Then here I go, said Aragon, starting up the vine. The pigeon was wide awake at this time, ready to fly away, but the voices down below continued. Wait a minute, said Snowbell. Don't be in such a hurry. I don't think you better go in there tonight. Why not? Said the other cat. Well, for one thing, you're not supposed to enter our house. It's unlawful entry, and you might get into trouble. I won't get into trouble, said the friend. Please wait until tomorrow night, said Snowbell firmly. Mr. and Mrs. Lill will be going out tomorrow night, and you won't be taking in such a risk. It's for your own good I'm suggesting this. Oh, all right, agreed Aragona. I guess I can wait, but tell me where I can find that bird after I get in. That's simple, said Snowbell. Climb this vine into George's window, open through the open window, and then go downstairs, and you'll find the bird asleep in the Boston fern on the bookcase. Easy enough, said Aragon, licking her chops. I'm obliged to you, sir. Well, the old thing, whispered the pigeon to himself. He flew away quickly to find a piece of writing paper and a pencil. Snowbell said good night to his friend and climbed up the vine and went to bed. Next morning, Marigold found a note on the branch of her fern when she awoke. It said, Beware of a strange cat who will come by night. It was signed a well-wisher. She kept the note under her wing all day long, wondering what she had better do. But she didn't dare show it to anyone, not even Stuart. She couldn't eat. She was so frightened. What had I better do? She kept saying to herself. Finally, just before dark, she hopped up to an open window without saying anything to anyone. She flew away. It was springtime, and she flew north just as fast as she could fly, because something inside her told her that north was the way for a bird to go when spring comes to the land. And we're going to stop right there, my friends, and stay tuned for next week to see what happens next in Stuart Little. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.